The first agenda item is adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion on that? Now we have an addendum that we need to add to it. And that should be, the addendum is item 8.1, which is Joint Recreation Committee funding request. Anybody want to make a motion with that one amendment, or do you have any other changes? Seeing no other changes, Councillor Gilroy.
Okay.
Adopt the agenda with the change.
Thank you. Okay, I move that council adopt the amended agenda, the one with the extra addendum in it.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Now, and we have our scheduled delegation is here, so I'll invite Staff Sergeant right up to, and I'll just turn it over to you. Oh, I should get you to turn your mic on, just as a reminder. Yeah.
Where's the cake?
Okay, here's the problem. Here's the problem. The county got tipped off about the cake. And I was at the county council meeting this morning at 10 o'clock, and it came up. I knew it was going to come up. I was in Red Surge. I was swearing in the Reeve and the deputy Reeve, which I could do for you if you'd like, but not down. I think you've already done that. Anyway, so it turns out I think I owe the county about 18 cupcakes now. So I'll see what I can come up with. I said I couldn't play favorites. There's been some recent communication from K-Division down through Grand Prairie District to me that they would like to see us, they'd like to see us a little bit more present in council meetings, not monthly, but quarterly. Traditionally, it's been once a year or as when required, but I can tell you I've been to council meetings probably more with the town than I have with any other community. So I'm going to try very hard to appear after every quarter. So right now I'm just kind of speaking to the end of my second quarter, which was September 30th. I just had a few sort of comments and thoughts that I wanted to pass on to you based on some of the stats that I reviewed this afternoon, as well as talk to you about a couple of other things. And then I'm done. Subject to questions.
No, that sounds good, and we'd love to have you more often.
Well,
We'll
we'll most certainly try to be here more often.
Or bring a taser for him, okay?
So, I think we all know that High Prairie can be, well, for the RCMP anyway, can be very, very busy. The question is where are we busy? I mean, I think generally everybody understands that we do have commitments that are north of town that do take a lot of our attention. But statistically, in the last 9 months, we've had 5,218 calls for service. And of those calls, we've only had 2,471 in town. So that's around 45%. Now that's a little bit high because I think the average is about 40% of our call volumes in town. But if you just talk about calls, what kind of calls? Because I broke it down in terms of charge calls, where we laid charges. And I can tell you of the 5,218 calls we took globally within our detachment area, we laid 1,521 charges, which is a lot. But out of that 1,500 some odd charges, how many were in town? About 20%, 333. So where are we spending our most time and effort? Not in town. And even if we are in town, we're not on the streets. We're doing up the files. Because over the years, the files have gotten, let's be political here, very complicated. There's a lot of different layers of reporting and forms and requirements and documentation that we need to fill out, not only for the courts, but also for the RCMP themselves. Certainly a different force than I joined in 1993, where paperwork was a lot simpler and we seemed to be out on the road a lot more. So I'm aware that, you know, we have a bit of an AUMA thing coming up with the CO, which is my boss, my big boss, my provincial boss. And the town has an opportunity to talk to them. Now, I am not suggesting to you what you should talk about, but I will have a conversation with you as to what I think that you could think about. And that is police visibility. So I've been here 3 years. Very consistently, the town has brought up police visibility as an issue. And it's not that I haven't heard you, it's just that sometimes I feel a little bit powerless because I know my members are pretty much reacting to call after call. And if they're not reacting to calls, they're doing the paperwork, so it doesn't leave very much patrol time. But that being said, I know that there's a bunch of changes. I know that, you know, and I can't comment what the province is doing, but I am aware that there could be some positions, provincial positions, up for grabs. So I'm not asking the town and the county to go into cahoots to give me another enhanced position. I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking for is, I'm asking for another provincial position, which I think that we deserve. But this provincial position wouldn't be necessarily just general duties, you know, and it wouldn't be necessarily going on, say, calls for violence or property crime or anything like that. I want that position to be for traffic. I want that position to work with Al. I want them to work together. And, you know, and as long as I'm the detachment commander, I would protect that position to ensure that unless there was some sort of catastrophe, that position would continue to be on the road and do those traffic duties. Because what it would do is this: it would provide safer streets and roads for the townspeople and the county residents. Not only would that position be in town, but it would be in the hamlets surrounding. It'd be on the highways. It would be doing a lot of the extra traffic duties that maybe have fallen to the wayside over the years because we seem to be just answering calls for service. But it's a police presence. They're on the road. They're not in the office, right? And as an added bonus, it also adds a level of safety for Alan and the duties that he performs, especially if they're working together and doing joint forces operations or whatever, right? Please don't print this in. It's been my experience that when I ask for things, I don't get them. But when the communities ask for things, that's when things start to roll forward and move forward. So if you just sort of, I don't know, think about what I said, I would love to take one of my existing members that I have now and just make them a traffic person. But I've got so many young junior cadets right out of depot that I need all of my resources just to train what I have. And plus we've got a big attrition rate here next year as well. So I just thought if I could have one more, then maybe I could make them a full-time traffic. So that's my idea, that's my pitch, that's my conversation. Aside from that, the other thing I wanted to talk about to council is restorative justice. Maybe some of you know what that is, maybe some of you don't. There's a really good quote here, I'd rather read it than explain it. Restorative justice is a victim-centered process that seeks to hold offenders accountable for their actions while addressing the causes of crime and the impact on victims and the community. The program can be an alternative or supplement to any sentence and can be initiated by voluntary agreement between the victim and the offender at any time during the criminal justice process. So let me break that down for you. Just like victim services, it's not RCMP-led per se. I may seek out somebody to kind of take it on and run with it. The big thing is to secure funding. And again, not asking the town or the county for funding. I've identified a person, his name is Brad Cunningham. Some of you probably know Brad, he's been around forever. He's shown a real interest and ownership into the restorative justice program for the town and the county. And it's a process that might be still 6-9 months away, but we're trying to look into provincial funding, grants, those kinds of things. What we may be coming to the town or the county later is just in terms of whether or not they can provide some office space, that kind of thing. Because again, we would like it to be a town and county thing, because a lot of our other communities in our detachment area actually have their own criminal justice people, they have their own restorative justice programs. We don't really have anything for town. And when it comes to property crime, like the minor stuff, the low-hanging fruit, the vandalism, the shoplifting, the chocolate bar, that kind of stuff, this is the ideal type of crime that we can put into this program and divert this person from the criminal justice system altogether. So it's the community, so you have a coordinator and who does the screening of the intakes and stuff, and it can be something that's referred to the committee by the RCMP, or it could be through the Crown prosecutor. But what we do is we take a case and we send it over there before they even see a judge. And there's a committee, a panel of people, and they sort of adjudicate after they hear from the victim. Let's say it's Friesen Brothers, for example, right? Shoplifting. So they would hear from an employee or a manager of Friesen Brothers. Then they'd hear from, say, the youth and their parent or whatever, and they'd come up with some type of plan to make it right. And then, of course, the coordinator would be there to make sure that they saw it through. And if it's successful, then it's concluded and it never sees the light of court. And then that way we're diverting young people or adults from otherwise a criminal record or a criminal record getting worse. It's very progressive, it's been around for a while, but we haven't really got it here yet. So kind of going to leave you with that. What I was hoping was Brad could come one night after he's got all of his research and basically his business case, and present a formal presentation to council to see if this is something that you'd like to support. We're not asking for money, we're just asking to do this in town kind of thing, in the county. So we'll do that sometime down the road. But I think it's definitely worthwhile. So those are the basically two things I wanted to say.
Councilor Long.
One's a comment, one's a question. Restorative justice is an amazing process, and we had an individual in BC that Glenn Purdy, he was a lawyer, and he went to New Zealand to look at how they did the restorative justice with the Maori communities there, and the sentencing circles and all of the things that went. Amazing process. I'm glad you're looking at it. The question is attrition. You said you're having some attritional movement next year. How many?
It's changed, so possibly 8, up to 8. There's 26 of us. That's also inclusive of FOST. So of that, yeah, possibly 8. So that's about a third. Yeah, we've actually we're currently moving 3 people out in the next little bit. 2 more just after Christmas. We're getting cadets all the time. Like we've got 2 coming in the beginning of November, both French-speaking from Quebec, and we've got another one coming more or less January 1st, also French-speaking from Quebec. And so it's just we're cycling through. I mean, but I mean, these people are staying 4 years. Mm-hmm. So that's our limited, High Prairie is a limited duration post. Some communities are 3, some are 4, some are 5. And some don't have a limited duration status, like say Grand Prairie, for example. But High Prairie is deemed to be 4.
Good luck.
Well, we're trying very hard to keep on top of all the new cadets coming in, and we're training more junior officers all the time to take on cadets, which is it's not a High Prairie issue, it's a provincial issue. It actually could even be a national issue, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, when I got in 1993, my trainer had 4 years service, which was good. And when I started training cadets, I had 4 years service, and now less than 2.
Wow.
So, young people.
And getting them to get involved in the community.
Well, that's a generational thing, I think.
It sure is, yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I'm not gonna toot my own horn, but I think sometimes I'm the only one that's doing stuff outside of work. But then I'm older and I'm from a different generation, different era, right? So
Sure, sure.
COVID doesn't really help either when I try to encourage them to do stuff, but it's just younger people.
I have a question for you. I know we saw, with the changing in police funding, and they came out with identifying where the new positions were going to go. I noticed that High Prairie wasn't one of them.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I bet you did. Do you know why we weren't? I mean, everybody's probably asking the same thing, and there's a lot of different communities weren't on that list. But any ideas on why?
We had some statistics come out, and I didn't really understand them, and I objected to them because they were saying that we weren't as busy per member as, say, Stettler, which I still don't understand the math behind that. They had some kind of formula in K-Division. I again don't understand it, and they came up with that currently we're adequately staffed, even though I am always been a very vocal advocate to have 5 more members. I decided that there's not a lot I can do to lobby from my desk, and that's why I talk to you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you see, it was based on statistics, and we weren't one of the higher statistical areas. Is
Yeah,
what you're
like
saying.
if I remember correctly, when I saw it, there was a threshold. It was a number like, I don't know, 1,100 or something like that. Basically, it was just the weighted workload per member. But the problem is they didn't factor in that a lot of our calls are 1 hour north of town. Whereas, some of these communities, they have most of their calls in town. So their return time is a lot easier, and they're not consuming all those hours by traveling. So they didn't factor in details like that. Because, I mean, like, do you know how many deer strikes I've had in my fleet this year alone? I've had 6. Like, they're always on the road, they're always driving somewhere, and great distances. And again, like some of these communities, not so much. So, I mean, there's reasons why we are as busy as we are, and the members' time is consumed, but they didn't take into account all those factors. So I guess it was somebody in Edmonton.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? I don't see any. So thank you very much for coming in and talking with us. Oh, okay.
How has the relationship with the dog handler with the rest of your crew been?
Fantastic.
Yeah? You utilized it a few times already?
Yeah, he came to council with.
Yeah, he
County.
did, yeah.
Yeah, he did. And
That's awesome.
what was his? I can't remember his stats, but I don't want to misquote what he said. But he's been here 2 months and he's had like 36 calls or something like that. I know that we've made some arrests, and I know that in some cases that the individuals chose to ran, but they were apprehended. So he's been extremely effective. He's fit in perfectly. Again, I've never seen a dog handler so frequently as we do now, as we're enjoying now. So it's life's got a lot better. Like public safety, you can't put a price on public safety and police officer safety, and to have that around is just like.
I just wanted to, your reaction, I'll leave it.
Oh, no, I mean, I know how hard everybody pulled together to make this happen over 6 or 7 years, and to have him here almost doesn't, like, it just feels weird that he's here. But it's fantastic. He's a fantastic resource to use for what we need him for. Yeah. And, you know, in a perfect world with no COVID and schools, we'll be able to do presentations and stuff like that more, so definitely maybe next year. Get out there and do some more demonstrations and stuff like that. So.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in, and I was going to say we did hear your needs quite well, so, well, yeah.
But I want my needs to be your needs, you know?
Oh, yeah, no.
Because the CO doesn't really want to hear Warren Wright said, you know what I mean?
No, yeah.
We're picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah.
But if he gives us cake, we'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thanks again.
Stick around for Chris, so
Okay.
just wait for him.
Okay, and we now have time for a public delegation. You want it?
Good evening to council. Is public delegation 5 or 15 minutes? I forget.
It's 5.
Okay, cut me off at 4 on light up because I have a second item I want to talk about.
Okay.
So light up, it's no surprise. Basically, everything is canceled. We all know that. So the only thing we're really proceeding with is, very well know, Randy McPhail came to see us the other day. He's a new guy. You've seen him putting up lights. We give him a budget of $3,000. I haven't got my letter yet to the treasurer, which I'll get in the next few days, outlining that he can spend up to $3,000, and we will pay that in December once we're invoiced and you collect the bills. The only thing that we're considering right now, it is our, and I'll say the word intention about a parade. We meet in 2 weeks. We're going to check with Alberta Health Services to see if that's even a possibility. I'll leave it at that because some of our members want it and some of us don't want to be bothered. So we're going to check into it and see. I'm sure you've done the closing the street as you always have, eh? Oh, it's always been done by administration, so. Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's too late to even do it now, but I'm sure they'd rush it if we had to it anyway. So, and we're going to have new decorations in front of the spot where you put the plant the flowers out front. We had a lot of damage last year, and due to age on that and everything, it's just time they're replaced. We can keep the greenery, but the twig lights are basically going to be gone. But we have a surprise there we're working on for that. So I'll entertain any questions. And of course, Trevor knew we weren't going to be in the fire hall this year for obvious reasons. I just haven't gotten you an official letter yet, so you'll be getting that, but so you can put it in the recycling bin. So I'll answer any questions if you have any on Light Up.
Any questions? I don't see any around, so yeah. Thanks for
Yeah,
letting
pretty
us know.
straightforward stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'm wondering why on the agenda tonight that the most grant isn't on here. I've seen it at Girouville, MD Smoky River, McLennan, and Donnelly. We're eligible for $260,000 that we can possibly claim. I talked to you about this last week. It's not on the agenda. I'm really wondering why. I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
I can't say I've talked with Rod, and we've applied for the grant already. So
Okay, so shouldn't it come to council for ratification? That's what everyone else had done. That's why I'm surprised it's not on the agenda.
no, but,
No, we applied for that without.
yeah.
Yeah, it has been applied for. Administration didn't bring it forward. It's been mentioned, and it's going to be assisting on, I think, the project that's within here.
Yeah, that's an automatic when I seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just, all the council, they don't know what it was, and I did talk to one today. They didn't know a thing about it. They should know. This is a pretty significant thing that's going to happen, and going to require a lot of work for administration, but it's certainly worth it. It's a whole bunch of stuff on page 11 of today's paper about it if you either
Yeah, it
do
was.
what you need to do.
Yeah, I think it was included in the financial update last 2 weeks ago. Correct, Rita? That's when we made mention of it. But you're correct. We didn't bring it forward, but we did talk about it at the last financial update, right? At Balance Books.
municipal operating something transfer, I can't remember what the S stands for. But, okay, good, as long as you're on it, because the deadline's Friday. So we sure don't want to miss out on it.
No, you're absolutely right, yeah.
Okay, thanks, that's it. Thank
And
you.
we should probably get a report of exactly what we're applying for on that, just so that we're in the know too of,
Well,
you
I
know,
gotta
what are
tell you,
the-
I wouldn't want to make the application.
yeah.
Because as the town of McLennan CAO said, you eventually have to go through line in the budget. But it's worth it, like you're eligible for 260 grand
Yeah.
to get back, so it's, I mean, that's, just speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck with it, like I said, I wouldn't want to do it. But, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All right, we'll move on to our peace officers report. Can I get a motion on this? Councillor Stenhouse.
The council received the Senior Peace Officers September 2020 report for information.
Thank you, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Good evening. Pretty straightforward month. Had 4 dog complaints at large. 3 tickets issued, a couple warnings, speeding tickets issued under the bylaw, traffic bylaw, and 1 loitering ticket issued. So bylaw has been fairly busy for September. Had 12 files initiated, and provincially was very busy also. So lots of speeding tickets and unregistered motor vehicles. The one thing I will bring to council's attention is the last meeting I was at, somebody asked what the provincial breakdown was for fines that the municipalities get, and it's at the bottom of the second page. The provincial government receives 40% of the revenue. Victims of crime receive 20%, and municipalities receive the remaining 40%. So, other than that, any questions?
Councillor Stenhouse and Councillor Danaka.
In trials, you have 2 bylaw and provincial trials?
Yes, yeah, we had 2 trials last month. They were provincial trials.
So I would want to comment on this breakdown of the revenue. So they get 40% of the funds collected, but it doesn't account for the time that you guys spent and everything like that, correct?
No, it's just the ticketed amount. Our time doesn't factor into that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Danaka.
Just a couple questions. Your bylaw infractions, your 10 and your 9 tickets issued, can you tell us which ones those were? Were the traffic?
Yeah, they're listed here. There's 3 tickets for dogs at large, 5 tickets for speeding, and the 1 ticket for loitering in public.
Okay. Now going to your second page, provincial offenses, and you may not have an answer to this, but for the month, 15 unregistered motor vehicles seems pretty high.
That's what we did. That was the amount that we found and ticketed.
don't know that, like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have been stopped, but to me, that number of unregistered vehicles in a month is really high. And I'm actually surprised by that amount.
I count 3 or 4 every couple of days. When I look at license plates, though. I see it. There's no stickers.
The provincial government doesn't send out reminder notices anymore.
No.
So that's the common response when we stop somebody with I didn't know, I forgot, or nobody notified me.
So that was sort of I guess that was sort of my question, is that sort of COVID related in the sense that people couldn't go to get their registration, or they extended and then they forgot, or that kind of stuff, so.
That's possible, but I don't see, it's one of those things that,
It's really affected the general public when they don't send out the notices anymore. You see it all over the place. People just forget, and it's not one of the things you're looking at all the time, right? And I see lots of them. I really do.
Councillor Long?
The one thing I'm surprised at is how low the distracted driving tickets are. The amount of people that I see every time I'm on the road on that phone all the time, right at this intersection. Like, so I'm surprised that it's only 3. Hit them hard.
I don't even know it was you.
Councillor Gilroy?
I noticed that under dog attacks, you had 2 warnings. What is the procedure normally for a dog attack? I'm thinking a dog attack would be something kind of vicious, and you'd have to deal with the dog as opposed to warning. But how does that procedure go?
well, it depends on the severity of it, obviously, and these 2 incidents were dog on dog, so no humans were affected or bit. It's just a matter of people not restraining or leashing their dogs when they're out.
The warning if it's dog on dog, but if it's
Well,
dog
no.
on human, then
Depending on the circumstances, we will ticket for certain attacks, dog on dog, but
judgment call.
judgment, yeah, and severity of it also too. No dogs were injured or severely injured.
Anybody else? No. I had a couple of questions for you, or one comment is I like the new report. Sort of the new format is nice and
Easier to understand and read.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so that was nice. I mean,
Bigger font, yes.
yeah, I was just gonna say larger font would be nice. Yeah.
Probably a 16 would be. Then you wouldn't need glasses,
Yeah,
right?
anything bigger than an 8 would be appreciated. Yeah.
You can have the stickers on the license.
Don't worry, I did the same thing.
Yeah. And the other thing, I wasn't sure about the monthly ticket breakdown, because you talked about the breakdown of being 40, 20, 40.
Yes.
As being, and that's a consistent number over time, right? Like that's always the breakdown of when you give out a ticket, 40 to the province, 20, okay, and
Yeah.
40. So when you were talking up from 26% in the previous month, what does that mean?
Well, the monthly has nothing to do with the month. Disregard the month. This is the actual percentage breakdown.
Okay, but yeah.
But it just refers to the amount of tickets issued during that month, or amount of revenue issued. So.
Okay, so you're saying that the revenue, it was up 26% in the previous month?
No. That's just a misinterpretation of what I submitted. The province originally received 26.6%. Then they upped it to 40%.
Oh, Oh, okay, so that's what you're
Yeah.
referring to.
Yes.
Okay, so when did they up that? Was that,
I believe it happened probably roughly 2 years ago.
so this is a result of the new provincial government and?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
No? Councillor Courtly?
On that is, so there actually is an account for victim of crime. So,
Yes.
so
Victim
like 20%
services.
of a speeding ticket, or 20% of which ticket
I'm assuming it's all,
goes to victim of crime? So who gets that? I've never ever heard of anybody getting paid out. Like, if that's what it's for, right?
yeah, it's,
It's a pot of money that goes into the provincial government's coffer under victim services.
Well, victim services.
yeah, that's just another name, victim of, yeah.
Because I say, if I felt like I was a victim, I should get paid, right?
Well, that's, yeah.
Well, you can make an application to the province.
I know, but I'm just clarification.
Yeah.
So Alan, when I look at this again, I'm still getting questions around this. So bear with me.
Sorry,
But,
It's okay, sorry.
but it's the province is now getting 40%, which is up from 26%.
Yes.
Victims of crime is getting 5% more from 15, and municipalities are up 7%, which is good. However, if we look at before, you take the 33, the 15,
Yes,
and the
that's-
26, it didn't add up to 100. Where'd the rest of the money go before?
That's a good question. Maybe we should phone the
Oh, okay.
government
We,
and
we
ask
don't
them.
know where it went. It didn't go to the
These figures are, from what I've received
Okay.
through my,
Well, and in the past, it really doesn't matter. We got to look forward. I'm just curious on if you knew what had happened to the rest of it before. I mean, now we know we get 40% of it, and that's good.
Wouldn't there be a federal portion of that as well?
no doubt, yeah.
More? No?
I don't know.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I know things. I just don't want to do that.
He probably knows more, actually, but anyway. So this is what I was informed of, so.
So we get 40% of the tickets that you write. That's the key thing for our municipality
In the town, yeah.
in the town.
Not just what he writes, sorry to interrupt there, but also if the RCMP put a ticket within your municipal boundaries, you also generate that revenue.
Oh, okay. So if you, Alan, write a ticket and you're in the county gets that 40%. So it's with whichever boundaries you're in.
Yes.
Okay, oh, gotcha.
Drag him back in town.
That's right. That's why we need that new traffic officer that's been suggested, eh? We need that to balance our budget at 40%. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Okay, moving on to item. Oh yeah, we got a vote. We had a motion from Judy to receive for information. All in favor? Carried. Public Works, can I get a report on this one? For the 47th Street tender? Councillor Danaka?
I make a motion that council approve the 47th Street tender as recommended by MPE Engineering for $767,000 to Ruel Concrete Limited.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Vern to fill us in.
Okay, I think council is well aware of the 47th Street issues that we have over there, including the 3 water breaks that we fixed in the last couple of years. The tender was well below the $907,000 that was originally estimated. We haven't worked with this company before, but I'm sure they'll be fine. They have done paving in the Falher and McLennan areas and that for quite some time. I verified the cost funding with Rita, and it's there for your consideration.
All right, so we'll just open it up if anybody has questions or comments on this. And I see we do have Councillor Stenhouse wants to get us started.
So it's a comment, and I know we have to do this, excuse me, but keep in mind from the MPE report that they're asking for another $68,000 in case they run into problems. So you're not just voting on the $767,000, we also have to put aside another $68,000. Page 9 of the MPE report. Last paragraph, it says that the MPE estimates that reside engineering fees for this report will amount to an additional $68,000 plus GST.
Isn't that on the next page though, where it talks about the resident inspection of the page 10?
Page 10, yeah.
Yeah, page 10's got the 68 and the 22 in there.
Okay, well, I see Vernon's got his hand up, so we'll let him.
Okay, the original estimate, or the engineering that was done, was to get that project shovel ready. There is engineering costs after the fact that once the project begins. Lots of times we never spend that amount because they don't ever do the entire amount of work. The disbursements for sure is when they're here for, if they travel from Edmonton to meet with the contractors. We usually have a site meeting every 2 weeks during the construction. They supply an on-site person to verify that it's being done properly for our benefit, and that's where these costs come. If we do have a project in the area, say the MD is doing something, we don't pay that entire cost because they're up here, we're splitting costs with the MD or another contractor. That's their estimate as to what it might be. And it's for other stuff other than design engineering, design and tendering. So the original amount that you approved for 47th Street, the $35,000 was to get it shovel ready and tendered.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Or do you have?
No, I just want to make sure that you realize that that's what's going on here. Like we have to do it.
I think if you look at all of our tender approvals, it's there every time.
Any other questions on this one? No. All right, and when would they be able to do it? Did they say?
Ruel Brothers, our Ruel Concrete Limited, is willing to honor their bid price if it's awarded in the next, basically in the next few days. And they will do it first thing in 2021 when construction season starts.
Okay. All right, any other questions on this?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Because this is Ruel Concrete, not Ruel Brothers.
Yeah, it's Ruel
Ruel
Concrete.
Brothers was bought out
By E-Construction.
yeah, E-Construction.
Yeah.
So that's
This is Ruel Concrete.
okay. That's a good
Yeah.
piece over then.
Yeah, these guys are based out of Falher.
Okay, they have a pit and stuff in Peace River then. Yeah.
Ruel Brothers and E-Construction have a pit in.
These guys do too.
They do too?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Okay, no, I just clarifying it's not this.
All right, if there's no other questions, we had a motion to approve that tender. All in favor? It's carried. Don't go anywhere, Vern. We got our raw water reservoir repairs is next. Can I get a motion on this to get the ball rolling? Councillor Long?
That council approve MPE engineering proposal for $67,000 to bring the raw water reservoir into dam compliance legislation.
All right, I'll turn it over to you.
Damn it, I didn't know it was a dam. I didn't. I've been working here for 34 years, and this is the first, when that slide happened, is the first time that I found out that it was considered a dam. So This hasn't been being done, the requirements of the legislation, and we need to get into compliance. It's not a if we do, it's when we do. And this is something that has to be done. When we had the slide out there, we brought the engineering team in to do a assessment on it to make sure it wasn't structural, which it was not, it was surface. And even the engineering team that started out processing it didn't realize it was a dam. It's when they brought the dam specialists in that they just let us know that this is considered a dam. The reservoir is considered a dam. Thank goodness our lagoon is not considered a dam because of the height of the berms.
Councillor Long?
So is this something that we would consider beneficial to both the county and to the residents of High Prairie? And if so, should we even bother going to the county to see if they want to fund half of this, or do we just say enough of the county and just carry on?
We have to carry on the way it is. Whether council chooses to go to the county and ask for funding on this, that's up to council. This is the raw water supply for our water system. So that would be a council decision if that's what they...
Well, they don't think that water is very important, apparently. I don't know.
So, anything else?
No, I don't think so, because, I mean, I'll just get into a rant about how we shouldn't even bother because we can't trust them. But they'll just renege and pull the money out, and then it's back to the whole arbitration thing again. I don't know.
All right, so I had a question, Vern, about what they're doing for this 66,000 now. Are they actually doing the work to bring this up to standards, or is this just engineering costs?
They're actually doing some of the work to make sure that all of our documentation is compliant. This will be an ongoing thing after this year. It won't be near as much. Maybe one site visit. It has to be visited by a licensed engineer once every year to do an inspection. So this will bring us into compliance. It'll assist us in making a mitigation plan and a safety plan. They're doing some structural testing to make sure that there's no perforation from the inside coming out for water leakage. There's a lot of work to be done in order to get to that point. And once it's handed over to us, then we maintain it, other than the actual site visit once a year.
Okay, so what they're doing isn't physical work to the reservoir. They're doing testing. They're doing the paperwork to get this approved as
they're assisting us in getting the paperwork. We're working with them to do that. Another thing that my new grass took water, but a lot of the reasons why you have to keep it mowed the way we keep it mowed is just so that if there's any seepage, that grass takes up any water that happens to be seeping from inside. So this whole experience, I've learned a lot. There's a book this thick on damn dams.
Yeah, you would think, it doesn't seem like it should be a dam, but if it's deemed that way, then we have to.
And the safety plan is for forestry camp, the airport, people within the flash flood zone if it was to breach, right?
And I'm just sitting here thinking, should we be looking at in the future building more of a dugout versus a raised dam for the raw
if we were to expand? Well, yes and no. That reservoir, because it's elevated, if we lose power at the reservoir itself, we can still produce water at 20 liters a second because of the gravity feed that we can get through it, right? If you're at surface level, or ground level, I should say, you're having to pump.
Yeah. Well, and there'd be a lot of costs. I'm just trying to think if we've got to do this every year, if maybe there's a better long-term solution.
Well, this
to
isn't, the
that.
67,000 isn't every year. It's gonna be maybe 1,500 every year, based on it. And if we have someone in the area working on 47th Street, they can come do an inspection, and it's not even that much, right? But it does have to be inspected by a practicing engineer once a year.
Okay. Well, we know we got to get it done, so that's any other questions on this one? I don't see anything, so we have a motion to proceed with the dam reservoir. Any, all in favor? Carried.
So do we go to the county and ask them?
Well, we can talk about that after.
Well, I'm just saying, like, we've already approved it, right? We just approved it, and so now we have to go to cap in hand and ask the county if they think this is something that benefits their people as well.
I know. Well, we could ask them.
No,
I mean, I think.
That this is something that we need to do, or is it something that we just don't want to even entertain?
Well, I think we got a bigger one on the table right now that we need to address and see where that takes us.
Well, regardless,
Yeah.
so do we as an intermunicipal, in our intermunicipal joint agreement, is this something that we would ask the county to pony up half of that? Does this benefit their individuals in their counties?
Well, that's a question that not just for me, we can ask council, but yeah, in my opinion, this is just some of the other things, right?
Right, so it's got nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah.
It's a process now of making sure that for their benefit and for ours, that we follow the process that they expect of us. And if it's something that we need to inform them, this is what we would like to do, and we pass it to council, do we have your support, yes or no? At least then we know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's up to council if we wanted to go to there and ask.
And I guess my position is, if we always do what we've always done, we're going to be in the same boat again. So we want to make sure that we don't repeat the past and don't give them any leverage for the future. Make it easy for all of us and respectful for all of us. But if we don't need to approach them, then that's good too. Good. I just thought I'd ask.
Well, I'll throw it out. Council, is this something that we want to take forward to the county?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I got 3. The other 3, Councillor Danakas, or well, you know what? We can maybe bring it up. We can at the next council meeting when we can have some more information and hammer it out, like give it an official motion and go through it that way. Okay. There seems to be some will there, so we can move on then to our meeting minutes from October 13th. Get a motion on this? Councillor Courtley.
The council approved the minutes from the October 13th, 2020 regular meeting of council as presented.
All right, anybody have any changes, alterations to these? All right, you must be doing a good job with the minutes. We never have anything to change. That's good. All right, all in favor? It's carried. Any business arising from the minutes? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the addendum, the Joint Recreation Committee, the 2021 funding request. And can I get a motion for this one? And I've got one that's on here. I'll make the motion that council maintain the Joint Recreation Committee 2021 budget at the 2020 funding level. And I'll turn it over to our CAO to sort of walk us through this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly the COVID has had an impact on operations from a municipal perspective, and absolutely from our recreation's perspective, it has as well. There are absolutely increased costs associated with COVID and cleaning these facilities. In addition to that, especially with the pool, we're seeing reduced numbers that are coming through the door, maybe because COVID's still afraid to come out, and so we have a drop in revenues. Our biggest concern is looking at 2021, and we've met with the rec committee on a couple occasions, looking at various options to utilize these facilities as much as possible. But there's been a lot of talk out there as far as what may or may not occur with budgets, and so the committee wanted to get a commitment from both Big Lakes County and the town of High Prairie on what type of budget we'd be looking at for 2021. Obviously, if there's changes, it makes some changes to our business model, and there's several options that we can look at. But knowing that we have a foundational piece assists us in ensuring that we have a smooth transition into 2021, rather than receiving different budget news the mid-December and trying to adjust our business plan in 2 or 3 weeks. So the committee made a motion to bring this forward to councils to get some indication as to what that funding will be in 2021.
I'm just going to add a little bit, and then we'll get Councillor Gilroy's there, is that I attended the rec committee meeting, and they cannot maintain our existing service levels with COVID and everything with the funding levels. So if we wanted to maintain the service levels, we'd have to put in more money. So the Recreation Committee is looking at, cost savings, and it's basically, the service levels, maybe not having facilities open as long, and that kind of thing, and other options on how to balance and keep that budget the same. And so that's what they want to do, but I know there's a lot of work in building the budgets and figuring out these other options that are out there, like, how much would a facility have to be closed to save X amount of money to keep it at the 2020 levels, especially with COVID there. And we don't want administration spending hours, doing this. We want to make sure we know exactly what we're saying we want done, so that they know what to plan for and to start bringing options forward, so that the councils can approve it. This is the way they know what we can approve and go from there. So, Councillor Gilroy.
If we approve this, we are bypassing the recreation budget people, because you're basically saying we're approving the budget, and therefore there's no need to have members of this council on a review committee, because you've already passed it. You're passing it without them even seeing it. So I have a problem with that, because I believe we need to go, if you want this, I think it needs to be then sent to the combined joint recreation review, finance review committee, whatever, that we just appointed tonight especially, and then they should then bring it to both councils. Otherwise, we're getting in the habit of bypassing, or possibly bypassing, our responsibility to be on these finance committees, the budget review committees.
Do you want to tackle that one, or do you want?
I can.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think one of the struggles this go around is the mayor's indicated. There's going to have to be changes, and there are several different models to consider. Like, there's multiple models, and service levels are going to have to change. It really just depends on how dramatic they may be. And so having an idea is to just maintaining the amount of revenues that are there, enable us to at least provide some options to the rec committee and the rec budget. But I guess going in the dark as far as what the projected number is, administration could spin their wheels for days and days and days trying to come up with the various options. So I know this is unorthodox, but I guess we're in an unorthodox year with COVID, and it has created such a great deal of uncertainty in how we may have to look at delivering services. And the earlier notification we have as to what maybe a target is provides us with the opportunity to deliver as many services as possible, as efficiently as possible to our general ratepayers. So I can appreciate the comments with regards to the unorthodox piece, but it is, I think we've spent probably 6 hours in the past, no, probably more, hours in the last 2 meetings attempting to tackle this issue, and not having a bit of a target really changes the scenarios. I know.
There's been a pattern of the joint, either intermunicipal or joint recreation committee, in a sense, usurping the jobs we're supposed to do. And so, as I said, even if they said, you know what, we want to do it, invite the two funding parties to come, they look at it, you explain it, it gets recommended and gets finished, but at least it's protocol procedure. But if you want to do it that way, as I said, I will vote against it, but if everyone else votes for it, it goes through.
I understand your concern, and in some ways, yes, it would run over, but I think it's got to be a direction on how much we're going to change and what we would want to change in there. I mean, ultimately, we're given the direction of how much is each council willing to commit to recreation, because that's going to directly impact what service levels are going to be recommended and how we can fund them. And then we can start looking at, from recreation's point of view, how we can, what we can offer for that X amount of dollars. So they need to have something to plan on. We know that the county's having, financial issues. We know that the town is always in financial tough times. So we have to have a commitment on what each party is going to commit, and then we can start planning from recreation. Administration can't plan, the recreation committee can't bring forward any recommendations until we know what that dollar figure is. That's the bottom line. We need to have something to plan towards. And that's where it is. I think there still is possibly a good need for the recreation budget to be reviewed, because the budget will be specific, and in specific areas we're using this much in here and this much here and this much here, and people may have questions about it. And that's part of the process of the budget review, is to say, okay, how come this is way higher than this? How come this is there? And so there's still a chance to review it and look at the budget and see if you have any questions about it, and make sure those are addressed before it comes to the council. So I think there's still a need for the budget review, but I think we need, as both councils, have to come to some dollar figure that we're willing to put towards recreation, and we have to give that to administration so they can bring forth ideas. Do you have a question?
I was just going to echo what Brian was saying. There's still, in my mind, there's still a need for the budget review committee to have a look at the actual budget. We haven't looked at the actual, line by line budget, but we just know that administration needs a hard dollar to say this is where we're at. We can't go any more than this. At least now that they can curve the budget for that value. Then we can look at it and see and nitpick it and see where it's at there and approve it from there. But they need a number so they can go ahead with the services for that value.
Councillor Long, then Councillor Danaka.
So we're entering into a second wave, and shortly after into the new year, we'll end up getting that third wave. And that third wave is mutating into a COVID-21. They've already stated 6 months ago that rural Canada is going to get hit hardest when it hits that stage, and we're seeing it hit that stage sooner. We're unprepared as a community, and you can see that from the lack of people wearing face masks. We're going to get hammered. And if you want to really look at it then as a, not necessarily a line-by-line item, whether you believe it or whether you trump it, I don't care, it's going to happen. And people are going to be sick here. That's going to have a huge impact on our services that we can provide, because they're going to be shut down. I don't think maintaining it at 2020 level is realistic. I think it has to be cut. But if all it is a hard number for them to work on, I've heard that line before, but again, we're past the point of the budget review committee. It's pointless to have that review committee this year or this now to review a budget that's already been passed. It's kind of cart before the horse sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not really in favor of it. I'm trusting you, and we'll go with it. But I think we're not seeing the big picture here. We're not recognizing it. We're not willing to recognize it. And I don't want to be the guy who said I told you so in January, February, but it's going to happen. We're going to be sick. But nobody cares.
Councillor Danaka?
Okay. So what did we pay in the 2020 budget for recreation? What was it? 400 and
Ours
something?
was
or
600.
600, okay.
Bit, yeah.
Okay, realistically, we know at this point, right now, that we can't afford that. Right? We know that we can't afford that. So why are we saying we're going to go with the 2020 budget at 600 and whatever when we know we can't afford that? So why don't we look at a more realistic number saying, okay, what can we afford right now? Is it 200,000? Is it 400,000? This is all we can afford. This is it. Not 600,000, because we know we can't afford that. This is the time where we have to make those ugly, gut-wrenching decisions before we get started and move forward. So at this point, to go and say, okay, we'll give you 2020 numbers when we know realistically we can't afford that. So what can we afford realistically? Like, let's not give them something, a pie in the sky saying, okay, we went with 2020, we gave you 608, we're going to go that. But realistically, we know we cannot afford that amount of money. What can we afford is what I'm asking. Give them that number so they have something realistic to work with. Is it 400,000? Okay, this is what we're going to give you for recreation for 2021 is 400,000 because that's all we can afford. What are you going to give from the county? That's their decision. You have 800,000. Do what you need to do to make that work, or however you're going to work your magic to keep those facilities open, because we know those facilities, something's going to have to give. Something's going to have to be shut. So instead of prolonging everything in agony and deciding, okay, we'll move here, then we'll wait for this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll look at the budget, and then say, no, we can't afford that, but we're going to go with this. So let's skip all those little movements and say, right now, what can we afford? Period. This is what you're getting for recreation. That's all we can afford. We cannot afford the 2020 amount. We just cannot do it. And at this motion of doing that, I'm not in favor of this. We have to be conscious and we have to be realistic, saying what can we afford? Is it 300,000? Is it 400,000? We know it's not 684,000. We know that we can't afford that. So let's be realistic and give them a realistic number to work with, instead of some number that we know we can't afford. That's all I'm saying. Let's be realistic and give them a realistic number that they can work with, and stop piecemealing everything out and say, okay, we're going to go at this. This is what you get. We know something's got to give. We know something's got to close. This is how much you're getting. Whoever needs to decide what's gonna stay, what's gonna go, what's gonna give. Yeah, we're gonna have pissed off, angry people, but the reality is we cannot afford what we're paying right now. And we have to be honest and we have to be realistic about that fact. And saying, okay, we're going to give you 2020 just so you have a number to work with, when we know that that's a falsehood. Because we know we cannot afford 684,000. Period.
Okay, well, that is the question. That is exactly the question. What is the amount that we want to put towards recreation? And you're right, there's no use saying that it's going to be this if we're not going to do that, because then we're wasting administration's time. I agree with you. What is that number is what we need to come up with. And just correct me, was it 615? 1.5. Yeah, so it's not 684, it's 650.
Well, it
but,
would be for 2020 is what
Right.
I project.
Yeah, or-
2021.
Right.
We're
Right.
saying no, leave it at the same number, that's when.
Yeah.
So, just so.
Councillor Stenhouse.
Do we know where they're sitting at right now financially with the facilities that were closed for a while during COVID? Was there savings? Were they over budget?
We're hoping to be pretty close to on budget. It's within a few thousand, so pretty good. Yeah, we closed the closure, even though some revenues went down, but the closure assisted in expenses. So their last projection is very close. Like maybe.
Pretty well right on budget,
Yeah.
basically.
And the other thing that we have to think about here as well, not necessarily just with recreation, is that our last strategic plan, our treasurer told us that we have aging infrastructure. We have aging equipment that needs to be replaced. So we need to keep that in our back of our minds too when we're figuring, okay, what can we afford? Because what do we have in reserves? 6 billion, whatever. If something happens and we end up with 6 water main breaks, there goes our 6 million. We got nothing. We have to start thinking forward and future-wise and realistically, because we have to go back to balancing our wants and our needs and what we can afford. And this COVID has made us face those facts that we've been sort of semi-tiptoeing around going, well, really, we shouldn't. COVID's forced us to look realistically at our revenues, our money streams, our future, and we have to be realistic in what we can afford. I don't know if there's a quick, easy way to figure out a number what we can afford, in terms of recreation. I mean, I know it's not what 2020 was. We cannot afford that. I don't know, is there a quick, you sort of understand what I'm asking. Like, I don't know if there's a quick formula you can take from here and here and here. Okay, times that by that, divide that by this, times that by the square root of 54, and you get something, you get something sort of thing.
Well, this is just my thought, is recreation is something that the community wants, just like getting water to their house and getting sewer to their house. I mean, it's got it's a little bit more of a want than it is a need, because you need to have gas at your house, but it is still an expectation of the residents to have recreation. And I think, their residents are willing to pay for recreation because they expect it. And
True,
that's in there.
but I don't think we give our citizens enough credit. If we put to them saying, this is where we're at, this is all we can afford, I think they'll understand that, they know by looking around that things are tight. They know by looking around and in their own homes things are tight. People have changed their lifestyles. People have changed how they live and interact and stuff because of this whole pandemic and what it's done to them in terms of whether they've unfortunately lost their job or hours have been cut or whatever. So I think they'll understand when we say we would love to be able to offer that service to you, but at this point, it's not something we can afford.
Yeah. You know what, and you bring up a good point in that, we're going to have to talk to residents about this regardless, because, the rec committee identified that there's going to be changes in service levels. And you need to explain why those changes in service levels are happening, right? Like, the arena's not open as long, or the pool's not open as many hours, or it's closed on these days, whatever, comes out of the decision, there's going to be some cutbacks. Even because of COVID, as our CEO mentioned, that we can't offer the same service levels at the same price. If we wanted to keep the same service levels, the estimate was a higher rate, and the committee said, no, we're not going any higher rates, so we have to look at reductions. And that's what brought us to this point. What can the councils afford? Because we need to know, Big Lakes is going to be talking about this tomorrow. We're talking about it now. But we have to give administration time to start planning. We actually don't have much planning time when you think January is right around the corner, and that's when our budget starts to kick in. So we've really got to start identifying where we can make changes. We've got, staff involved. We've got other things that we need to start looking at and saying to people, this is, and I don't know if your question is, how do we get that right dollar amount that they're willing to pay? I don't know how we get that. We could have an open house perhaps, but I don't know if we've got, we could set an amount and then talk to residents. Like, we need to talk to residents at the end of the day. We're going to have an open house and, say, this is what we're looking at. This is what we said. What do you guys think? And this is the ramifications of setting that amount. Do you want us to up that a little bit? But we need to start at some point. And we are going to have to talk to residents about this, because there is going to be significant changes, and we need to be upfront with them and get some feedback from residents. I sort of see you there for sure. Councillor Long?
So then, when would you think that is a good time to start talking to the citizens and to our employees and all the other things? I can say from experience that the waiting to see if you have a job is harder than getting laid off. And you're chewing your fingernails trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And will I have a job tomorrow? What's going on? And for those of us who've been through it, it's not realistic for us to say to the public at this time that the 2020 budget should be sufficient. It's okay, we can work with this number. We can't. It's not a realistic number. And it's misleading to our employees. It's misleading to the people who want to use those services. Councillor Danaka said it best. We sell them short. the public understands what's going on, and they'll know why we're making the cuts that we have to make. Is it fun? No. This is politics, and this is what we got involved in. We have to make that decision, and if we don't have a number, then we better get a number quick, and then let the county know that this is the number we're dealing with. Don't have them go through well, we've already approved it. But you know what? I hope they don't do that to us.
That's what we're talking about. What are we as a council want to deal with, and what's the number? I mean, that's where we started from, right? And if it's not the 2020 numbers, and there isn't a feel for it, what is it? And how do we get to that number? We have to have that discussion. So go Councillor Long, then Councillor Gilroy to follow.
Keeping in mind that it was said to me by Councillor Stewart, you can't close these facilities down, we pay half the debt. They're going to make their motion, they're going to pass the budget as a 2020 budget tomorrow, and we're going to be hooped again, and we're going to have those same councillors that I have a problem with already telling us, you can't do this, we've already approved it. Guess what? We can't afford it. And so I think we need to say 450,000 is where we start. 450,000, let's see what happens to our recreational services and the delivery of services that we can afford at that dollar value. What is it that we can give to the citizens? Because 600,000 is out of the ballpark. It's way unrealistic. It's not fair to anybody. And it doesn't do our job, it doesn't make our job any easier. If we sit here and waffle, or if we're sitting here being dictated to by another political agency, then it makes it very frustrating. It ties our hands. And if I'm going to be on a committee to review the budget, I want to make sure that I'm having value added to that I'm not just going there spinning my wheels going, okay, I'm going to review the budget that's already been reviewed and passed.
Yeah, can I address the question about we can't, if they approve a different number, then we have to follow it? We don't. I mean, we haven't. Let's take the library, for example. I mean, when they came in for increases, the county said yes, we said no. I mean, we can say no, and we can set what we want to put out there. That's not, we're not being dictated to for that. I mean, if maybe they're going to say less than what we're saying, right? We don't know what they're going to say. We have to come up with our number, and that's where we start. Councillor Gilroy.
Every year, we come up with an interim budget that we pass by December 31st. And for the most part, we keep that budget. And when we try to make some changes into it, there are certain committees in that will accept that. Recreation is not one of them. And my concern here is this is going to be to them in stone. They will not, the only tinkering they'll allow us to do is move this salary to over here, or this plan to over here, but they'll not budge going down in any dollars. And to me, this reminds me so much of when we have we've been given requests from the swimming pool, for example, and they've already done the work, and we have to sign off on it because they've already done the work. Contractor needs to be paid, and if we don't pay him, then we're in big trouble. So I feel like we're being cornered on this. I would rather start with a negotiating number, which our admin can do, and then work it together with the people who are actually appointed to represent this council on the review committee. Because I think Councillor Long did an amazing job last year, and he actually questioned a lot and got some changes made that ran into additional savings.
Okay, I think we need to, at the end of the day, we got to come up with a number. And that's the starting point, right? So how do we come up with that number? I've heard start at 450. We've got a motion for 615, right? Like where are we going with this number? What would council accept? What would council live with?
I could live with 450. 375 would make me happier.
You pulling that out of the air?
Yes.
You're just pulling it out of the air?
Yep.
what's your backing on that? Like, what are you figuring on? I'm being honest. Like, what are you thinking?
I'm trying to find a comprised number that I can live with.
615 is too much, Harlan. We're saying no.
I'm saying 400 is too much. I'm saying, where do you get the number from? That's what I'm saying.
Start somewhere. You're telling us accept this number because it's 2020 budget. Accept it. No,
I'm not saying that.
Well, that's what the committee is recommending, right? They're saying accept the 2020 budget. We're saying to the Recreation Committee, which is not a board.
Yeah.
It's just somebody there to advise us.
Yeah, you're right.
That we don't have that money. Come up with a better plan. Now, here's the question though. You, as a Recreation Committee and as a former Recreation Board with all the people that are still in place there, they have a good understanding of what happens if you take 450 out. If you take 200,000 away, hopefully you guys have an understanding of what's going to happen. Play the scenarios out. Play and work the scenarios out. That's the committee. If the committee is that good, then they should have something in place. Having a 2020 and that's it, and that's final, and what are you going to take? What are you going to do? What are you going to take away? Don't know. We're saying this is the money. Take it to the administration and have them decide what it is that they have to work with. It's not my job to lay off. It's not my job to hire. My job is to balance this budget and make it work and make it realistic. And it's not realistic right now. And so I say 450, and then take it back to the Recreation Committee, work it out, massage it, see what happens. Give us the worst, give us the best case, and we can go from there. But and that's not even your purview either, really. 450,000, it's your purview. Fix it. Give us a scenario of what this entails by talking to your administrators.
Right. And that's why I'm asking, why are you basing it at 450? Why not base it at 375 or 395? Like, what's the purpose of the number?
Again, it's a number that I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with 375 as a start. 450, I could live with that. 615, no way. I'm trying to think of a realistic number that could be workable. Yeah. So that's where I'm at 375 to 450. I'm trying to think of something that's a reasonable amount that could still work with the facilities that we have, that they would still be able to maintain some type of accessibility.
Okay, keep in mind when you say 450. Okay, so it's matching dollar for dollar. It's 450 as well. So we're minus that 9. That's $300,000 will be minus out of the budget. Which, whatever. I mean, number's a number. Yeah. So 300,000 comes right off the top, which is right into service. So that's just so you know. Whatever we decide here, I'm good with whatever we decide. Because we have to cut, and I'm behind it 100% on cutting. I threw it out there. We had lots of different scenarios and ideas, but we're trying to make it a happy medium because that's what the county thought that they could put in.
But we can't, and that's the problem. And it's always been the problem. The county's got the money, we don't. And now it's a little tight for them, but we still don't. And so because it's tight for them, they must know that it's extremely tight for us. Coming to us with a 2020 budget has done nothing for us. It's I think will create some division and create some harsh discussion maybe, but it's not a realistic number. And so yeah, 450, where we got it, pulled it right out of the air. But come back with something more realistic that we can work with.
And like at 450, that's a 25% reduction. Just it's a heavy hit.
We know what 400,000 feels like. Yeah, it's a heavy hit. But at the end of the day, what can our taxes and our ratepayers and our taxpayers, what can they afford? And more importantly, how realistic is it to assume that the numbers of usage that we're getting right now is going to be the same 6 months from now? I guarantee it ain't. We've got to come up with a strategy that will reflect where we're going to be 6 months down the road. 6 months down the road is going to be even harder for us.
Yeah, and just going to your comment about trying to predict, what we're going to have is really very difficult to do, and to have your best plan, because I mean, we could have those facilities closed again anytime. We don't know when that could happen by the province, so we can't really plan on that. We don't know.
We can't plan on 2020 either.
Yeah, what we can plan on is, I mean, you're saying the people can't afford 600,000, and that's, I mean, yeah, that's your opinion, but maybe others are going to say, yes, we want to have that level of service. So that's the question, is what can we give to start planning and working on, right? It's not a definite that we can't afford it. We afforded it this year, and nobody's gone starving, right? Like, it's not the end of the world to stay at 600,000. It is a high amount, and we might want to look at bringing that number down. My opinion is 25% is an awful lot for what I think our people want.
It's a terrible number.
But that's my opinion, and you guys have got so I'm just saying it's a big hit, and I know we're going to have cuts, and I know we're going to need to make some. Out of one budget, 25%, that's a big hit, unless we're, I would say, are we looking at doing that for other areas of the town too, or is it just recreation?
Recreation's a white
That's the
elephant.
one.
It's hugely expensive for any community.
It is.
It's the one thing that we can actually address and say, if we do this, we'll save money. If we don't, it's going to cost us money, because they never pay for themselves.
No, they don't, but people still want them, and they're willing to pay towards them. Councillor Gilroy.
Knowing our next item is pool chemistry controller, and that we have, throughout the year, we do have extra recreation-based expenses to face, do we have any idea what we paid over and above our operating $615,000 last year for other repairs and renovations and all the rest? Because I could see us knocking it down to $450, which would actually give us some breathing room if we need to do some of these aging infrastructure things with the recreation, like the new pad and the hockey and the rest. So if we cut it down, we at least, in theory, would have the cushion to help get some of the other stuff done, or have, as opposed to trying to find the extra money later on if suddenly the main ice pad goes, and we've already spent all $615,000. I'd rather have at least some money set aside for possibly a rainy day here for any other pool stuff that we may need, or stuff like that. And so I would actually follow the lead of my two fellow councillors here, and $450. I'd be very comfortable with that.
Judy, you haven't weighed in much here. I'll get your thoughts, and then we'll...
I don't know what the number is. I do know that the 600,000 is too high, but I don't know the magic number. And it's really hard when we get to review it 2 minutes before the meeting to actually prepare our thoughts and everything about this. So I can't support passing that request, because if we pass that request, we might as well grant the fire whatever we gave them last year, and we might as well grant everyone else their budgets also. This is our job, is to look after the money and look after what's going on. If we're just going to blindly grant it without putting any thought or consideration into it. Like, I know we've had 45-minute discussion on this, but when I'm reviewing that fire budget, I'm spending days on it, going line by line and making all kinds of phone calls and saying, what do you need this for and what do you need that for? I can't support it, but I don't know the magic number.
No, and I can appreciate that, because you don't know what the budget is, but that's what we need to give a planning number to our CEO. He cannot plan for so many different scenarios to say, okay, this is what it's going to result in. This is what we're planning, because I think, you plan for an amount, you can take it to the citizens and say, this is what we're looking at. We were thinking that we should be spending this amount on recreation. It's going to result in How do you guys feel? This is our plan. And either they'll say, no, we want it, and if they want to pay more and they vote for it or something, we get that feeling with an open house, great. Because we do need to take this and get some feedback from our citizens on what we want to do. And they understand the ramification. Maybe they'll want more cut. Maybe, like those are all questions that we have to start planning out.
Do they truly understand that this is coming out of their tax dollars? When you throw out a survey, it's like, yeah, I want this and I want that. But do they truly understand that that money has to come from somewhere?
Well, I think that would be part of saying, here's an open house. This is what it costs. This is where it comes from. And this is what we're proposing and why. Because they need to understand. And it's a good point. COVID, especially for, this particular year, we ended up balancing, but our revenues are way down. It just happened our expenses went down enough to cover it. With those extra costs that we have, it's going to have to balance. Now, one of the things that I'm just thinking about 450 in my head is the arena is going to be running for, the teams have been planning to run for the first quarter. It's going to be running till the end of March, right? And teams have been planning on it. They're in provincials, blah, 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 blah. There's all those kinds of things. There's probably some cost savings that we can do there. But I don't think that we can or should just say, okay, we're going to close the arena down in January because we don't have, I think there's some things that we're limited to. We're going to have to keep running a little bit, and then, the next year we can look at what's opening in the arena and stuff, but I think we're tied to some expenses at the first part of the year. And then everybody can start planning and going from there. So, yeah, you know what, in 450 I'm not totally against. I would like to see it, maybe down to 20% or 15% other than a 25% reduction, but that's my thoughts, and we got council makes that decision, and then we can take it to the people, and then we can get some feedback.
Not that we're going to...
Councillor Long.
I'm not looking for consensus, really. I don't think we'll achieve that. I think that that the number that we're looking for is nebulous, and really we don't know what the number should be. But I would like to be able to try to come to a number tonight that we'll be able to at least say, this is something we could live with for you presenting it back to the Recreation Committee, back to council at the big leagues. Rather than just accepting it at 615 it's not very responsible, I don't think. And so if we can bring it down to 500,000, say, if that makes your percentage and your number something you could accept, and if it's something that Judy could accept, something that I understand the frustration you must be feeling, and I get it. But at the end of the day, come March, we're not going to be playing the same way we're playing now even. The restrictions are going to be province-wide, I'm sure of it. We've been so fortunate and lucky that this community hasn't been hit as hard as it has been. And so if we can come up with a number that you're at least comfortable with that you think it's a realistic cut. And it's a cut. It's like, I'm not polishing it up. It hurts because we're dealing with people's livelihoods when we talk about this stuff. But we're saying it'll fail at 615. Whether it's 3 against 3, it's still gonna fail. So we've got to come up with a number. Something that hopefully we can come to consensus on, but if not, then what's the number gonna be? Or do we just table this and put a motion forward to table this and let it go? That would really make things worse.
We need a number.
You do.
Need a number.
Go ahead.
Need a number tonight. If it's 450, it's 450. You want to make it 400, make it 400. We can go back and try to figure out. I know what we have to do.
We all know.
And yeah, well, and these are the options that we discussed, and we know how it's going to go. I mean, you can plan on ifs and buts, but until it happens, you have to assume that we're still going to try to give services and try to make sure recreation's needs are met in our community, right? Because that's our end responsibility, to make sure that is able. If we don't have the money, we don't have the money. I mean, it's what it is. Make it 400, make it 450. Give a number. I'll write it down. We'll do what we can do. That's what it is.
It's easier to increase it later if we need to, and if our finances improve, but it's harder to take it back later. So that's why I'm saying the lower number is because at least now, before we make the final one.
Let me add to that. What's hard to do later, when you lose manpower and you close facilities, later on down the road in a year from now, to try to fire these back up again, when you're dealing with young people with training, all kinds of stuff, young people in your community that you hope to stay in your community, all of a sudden aren't here because there's no jobs in what they like to do. And for our community, that's one of the major things for youth is our pool. When they're gone and you try to open up in a year from now, I'm just saying, that big of a cut, that's a locked door. A little less cut is reduced services and maybe they stay. That's the truth.
Well, of course.
So you have to.
So based on what you just said,
Yeah.
what's your number?
My number?
It's not 615.
It says carried unanimously. My original number was less, but after we discussed our services and stuff, 615 is a reduced service still. We have to reduce our services with 615. Really. We're looking at cuts in services at that number. So you cut to 450, you're looking at door closures. I'm just saying. That's what it is.
That's the reality.
That's the reality of it. So at 450, we may have more savings because we'll have less expenses because there will be no services.
Right.
So there'll be less than 450 needed. So, I mean, whatever it is. We can do, if the number's 0, we'll have 0. Right? So you got to keep that in mind.
So we're trying to come to a number that is palatable and reasonable for us, while at the same time not offending the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And so
offended.
telling us 0 is 0 and it's all good, we're just gonna have to close doors. Yep, absolutely. So is that what the committee's good for? Is to say if 0 is 0, that's it? Arlen, we're asking your advice because and recognizing that the 615 isn't what we can work with. What do you think the recreation department can work on with the least amount of pain, so that the citizens would be able to have some benefit, our employees would have some stability and some certainty to know what's going on? We're asking you because we care.
Yeah. No,
But
of the issue is, like, no matter what council decides to spend, it can be spent on recreation. Like, I mean, I think everybody knows that recreation you can offer more and more and more services. As been said here a few times, even staying at the 615 number, there are cuts. There absolutely are, and we've honestly gone through quite a bit of numbers and a few scenarios, and that's one of the reasons why we actually came here, just to get like a ballpark. There's just too many scenarios. But absolutely, as you start going down, there's so many fixed costs. That's one of the issues. There's a lot of fixed costs, and so just getting, an idea like going down to 450 can absolutely be done, but it is dramatic impacts. And the sooner we can get some idea, I know it's frustrating for a lot of people here, but there's just so many scenarios, and I think what we're trying to do is minimize the impacts to like staff and also the community. But the problem is our clock is ticking because the ice. I mean, we have more teams than we did last year, and so that was one of the reasons why the decision was made to start the second sheet of ice, because the demand, there's more teams than last year, and so there are increased costs to some of those. Because we have to have an extra cleaner, that type of thing, but there was huge demand, so decision was made, so we've already almost sunk, half the ice for half the year. And so as you reduce, it's considering, do we still have minor hockey in next year? And it's okay, but the sooner we know, the sooner we can start planning. And I just, it's so complex, and so if we can decide on a number, at least it can we can provide some scenarios. The problem is there's so many fixed costs and that type of thing, and so working through it, it's just the web. And so we're not trying, administration well, actually I think that was one of the reasons why this motion came out, because they saw how complex and all the numbers are interchangeable and are related to one another. And I think the committee saw how complex it was, and so just getting a target, gives us the ability to actually do some plans to utilize the facilities as well as they can. So I know there's a lot of frustration here. Like I just say, we already know it's a reduction, and when we started drawing the lines lower, the committee saw that, gee, these are huge impacts the further you go down. So let's just, before the rec committee ask for too many scenarios, let's just get a ballpark number from council. So apologize for appearing to be trying to get decisions before you know the impacts, but it is very complex. I don't know how to say it. We're not trying to make it complex, it just really is.
And I appreciate, what's been mentioned around here too, is we have other expenses that we don't have the full picture of, right? Like, what is our water and our sewers and our roads and those things going to cost? And we don't have all of those numbers now. And it'd be nice to be able to see, but we've got a general feel from the one meeting that those numbers aren't going down much either, but we are looking at other ways and some other income maybe sources there. So it's hard to balance something that we haven't seen the other picture of, and I get that. I just think that going down too low is going to cause some major grief, and maybe we do it in a bit this year and a bit next year if we want to drop it down. But I would not want to, for me, 450 is a little bit too low. 500,000 or even a little more would be great, but that's where I'm at. It's tough. It's tough to come up with that number, but we need to come up with something so that they can plan and we can bring back scenarios.
What's the motion read?
The motion reads to fund it at the 2020 levels. So I'm gonna, well, maybe I'll let you go a little bit further to.
Well, I'm thinking we should call the question on this.
Yeah,
motion.
that's what I was just gonna do.
And then take a break, come back, and let's figure this out a little bit.
Okay, well,
or if you want, we can hammer it out now.
Well, no, we've got a motion on the floor, so All of those in favor of funding at the 2020 level? Okay. Against? So that motion, did you vote? You have to vote.
One way or the other.
You have to vote one way or the other.
Did you do, what, I heard the 4.
Yeah, and then I said against?
Oh, against, okay.
Okay, you're, okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I thought, but you gotta vote.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that motion's defeated. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back and we can make another motion on the floor to